Beyond borders, rethinking sovereignty. The rigid borders we've traced throughout this video might not be the inevitable solution they appear to be. When we examine the concept of national sovereignty itself, the idea that a single government should exercise exclusive control over a clearly defined territory, we find it's a relatively recent development in human history, and perhaps not the only way to organize our world. Throughout most of human existence, governance worked quite differently. Medieval Europe operated with overlapping authorities where kings, lords, the church, and guilds all exercised different forms of power over the same territories. Citizens owed allegiance to multiple authorities depending on the specific matter at hand. This arrangement functioned effectively for centuries, showing us concrete alternatives to our modern assumptions about territorial control. Before the 1648 Treaty of Westphalia established the foundation for today's concept of territorial sovereignty, political power was understood as authority over people rather than exclusive control of land. A ruler's domain was defined by who owed allegiance rather than by precisely where their territory ended. Indigenous concepts of territory present another alternative to our current understanding of borders. Many indigenous traditions emphasize a multifaceted relationship with land that transcends the Western notion of exclusive ownership. These perspectives view territory through spiritual, cultural, and economic connections rather than through rigid boundary lines. The relationship is one of responsibility and stewardship rather than possession and control. For indigenous communities, boundaries were often zones of transition rather than hard lines of separation. Different groups might share hunting grounds, spiritual sites, or trade routes without establishing exclusive control. When European colonizers arrived with their maps and border markers, they fundamentally misunderstood these flexible arrangements, imposing Western concepts of ownership that continue to create conflicts today. What if our modern fixation with exclusive territorial control, where every square inch of land must belong to exactly one country, is more limited than we realize? The notion that governance must align perfectly with geography is not a universal truth, but a particular cultural and historical development. Today, we see alternative sovereignty models emerging around the world. Condominium arrangements, where two or more states share sovereignty over a territory, offer one alternative. The historical condominium of the New Hebrides, now Vanuatu, operated under joint British and French administration for 74 years before independence, creating dual systems for everything from courts to postal services. Special administrative regions like Hong Kong and Macau demonstrate another approach. These territories maintain distinct legal systems, currencies, and governance structures while existing within a larger state. Hong Kong's separate legal system, currency, and even driving side, they drive on the left, while mainland China drives on the right, show how sovereignty can be exercised differently across a country's territory. These arrangements offer practical templates for addressing some of our most intractable border conflicts. The functional sovereignty concept suggests that different aspects of governance could be handled by different entities based on what works best. Could water resources in disputed territories be managed by transnational river authorities rather than competing national governments? Might cultural heritage sites be administered by the communities with historical connections to them rather than whatever nation currently controls the territory? The European Union represents perhaps the most ambitious modern experiment in reimagining sovereignty. While maintaining member states as distinct nations, it creates a supranational layer of governance for matters like trade, currency, and movement of people. A resident of Strasbourg can work in Germany, use a common currency, and enjoy protections from EU-wide regulations while still being a French citizen. These flexible arrangements are particularly relevant to the unusual border situations we've explored throughout this video. The residents of complex border communities like Barl-Nassau/Barlhertog have created their own form of practical sovereignty that transcends the national boundaries running through their town. Their local cooperation agreements and dual identities offer lessons for other divided communities. Digital citizenship presents yet another departure from traditional territorial sovereignty. Online communities develop their own governance systems, shared identities, and decision-making processes that operate independently of geography. A programmer in Nairobi might feel more connected to their open-source software community than to their physical neighbors, participating more actively in governance of their online platform than in local elections. This doesn't mean territorial borders will disappear. Physical control of land remains fundamental to security, resource management, and many aspects of daily life. But these alternative models reveal that exclusive. Territorial sovereignty is just one way to organize human societies. The rigid borders that create the anomalies we've explored, the enclaves, exclaves, buffer zones, and complex demarcations, show the limitations of trying to divide a continuous planet into discrete national containers. When we examine border anomalies closely, we find communities adapting with creative solutions that involve informal sharing of authority and cooperative arrangements between different governments. The future of sovereignty likely involves a more complex tapestry of overlapping authorities rather than the simple colored blocks we see on political maps. Some functions of governance may move upward to regional or global institutions better equipped to handle transnational issues like climate change, while others may devolve to local communities with distinct needs and identities. For residents of places like the Fergana Valley, where artificial borders have created enclaves that complicate access to water and essential services, alternative sovereignty models offer practical solutions without requiring complete redrawing of national boundaries. Shared management of resources, special transit arrangements, or zones of cooperation could address immediate human needs while respecting existing national identities. The key insight from studying border anomalies isn't that borders should be eliminated, but that they should serve human communities rather than the other way around. When borders become obstacles to human flourishing, preventing access to education, healthcare, or economic opportunity, we should reconsider how sovereignty operates in those spaces. This perspective invites us to move beyond viewing borders solely as expressions of national power and instead see them as frameworks for organizing human cooperation. The most successful responses to border anomalies have been those that prioritize practical solutions for affected communities over rigid adherence to sovereign exclusivity. Throughout our journey, we've seen how arbitrary lines on maps have created real human consequences, from the India-Bangladesh enclaves to the Central Asian border maze. These geographical oddities are reminders of how political decisions can fragment communities and complicate lives for generations. The 2015 Land Boundary Agreement between India and Bangladesh shows diplomatic solutions are possible, but the most profound resolution comes from cultivating empathy for those caught between these divisions. What if we valued human needs over the lines we've drawn?